The way forward for China and the U.S., a departure from the past 4 years, or more of the same? Sharp insights from the president of the National Committee on U.S China Relations from New York, up next.
I think a lot that the Biden folks will reverse a lot of the policies which have damaged U.S China relations.
Welcome back. This is World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. Well, the new U.S. administration carried out a raft of policy changes on its first day. Its position on China remains unclear, even though we have been hearing words from the members of the current administration. It takes two to tango, as they say. There's hope both countries could help each other navigate choppy waters. So looking ahead, how could U.S. China relations shift under the Biden administration? Would the new U.S. president take on a different posture toward China? Answers to these questions will not only have critical consequences and impact on the two countries, but also for the broader international community. On that, I talked to Stephen Orlins, president of National Committee on U.S. China Relations, who had work experience on China for nearly 40 years. Here's the talk. Stephen Orlins, president of the National Committee on U.S. China Relations. What a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us right now.
Great to see you again.
Good to see you, Steve. How you been doing in New York?
Well, it's, compared to many people, I'm doing extremely well. We've been able to kind of transform the National Committee from an in-person organization to a virtual organization. So we do many public programs, which get huge distribution now. It's not as good as CGTNs, but we get thousands of people on our programs. We distribute our videos now to over 1 million people. So actually, we have been good, but obviously it's terribly sad that even today, over 4,000 Americans died of COVID-19. So the epidemic is still raging here.
Will we be able to, China and the United States, to work on COVID-19 in a cooperative way, from your perspective?
I certainly hope so. President Biden, one of the very first things he did was rejoin the WHO, and tomorrow, Dr. Fauci is going to be the American representative at a virtual meeting of the WHO. So we're going to certainly participate in the WHO. China, of course, has continued its participation in the WHO. In fact, has a delegation of WHO scientists in China now working with the Chinese. I hope we find lots of ways to cooperate, not only to deal with the pandemic as it exists today, but to deal with future pandemics. That the great tragedy of this pandemic, as I've said on your show in prior years, I believe that a pandemic would draw the United States and China closer together.
Mr. Orlins, one of the ways we could move forward is to be able to reflect back as to what really happened and how can we learn both from the lessons and experiences, shall I put it that way. What do you think happened over the past 4 years between China and the United States on the U.S. China relations, particularly from Washington's policy?
Well, from the Washington point of view, as I've said, the problem in U.S. China relations was not only President Trump. That if it were only President Trump, he would leave and then the relationship would be fine again. But it's not. It's much deeper. It's in the Congress. It's in the think tank world. It's in the media. It's in the American people.
How much misinformation, first of all, is there about China? It's hardly to be quantified, but certainly people point that as a big problem now. How can we correct that?
So the vicious cycle should become a virtuous cycle. President Trump is gone. But there are still lots of people who think his policies were good for the United States. I think they weren't. I disagree with the overwhelming percentage of the policies that he implemented with respect to China. But it's important that the Chinese government help change the atmosphere of the U.S. China relationship by doing things during this period that the Biden administration is deciding what its China policy is going to be.
It has a lot to do with how the one see the other, and therefore either extending the olive branch or being continuously cautious with one another. One of the things I really want to ask for your opinion, given your insights into the politics and also the China policy circle in the U.S., Mr. Orlins, is what is going to be the orientation, do you think, reading the signs, of the Biden administration's approach to China? Is it going to be about ideology? Is it going to emphasize on the differences of political system? Is it going to be finger pointing? Or is it going to be much more proactive engagement of a different sort with China?
Number one, it's going to depend upon what the Chinese government does. That the expertise in the Biden administration, from Tony Blinken to Jake Sullivan to Kurt Campbell to Laura Rosenberger to the people below them, is really terrific. We now have terrific China experts in the United States who are not ideological. They are not ideological. It is not the Peter Navarros and the others who just, no matter what China does, it was interpreted negatively. These are people who really understand. I think a lot that the Biden folks will reverse a lot of the policies which have damaged U.S. China relations. Especially, obviously, they already have with respect to climate. We will see climate cooperation end up very high on the list of things we talk about with China. I would expect to see improvements in visa policy, that the Trump administration's restrictions on students, restrictions on businesses, restrictions on Chinese who are in the United States and want to remain in the United States, I would expect the Biden administration to, after some period of time, to reverse it, which will create, again, that creates a positive tone. I'll expect the Biden administration to move towards discussing with the Chinese reopening of the consulates in Houston and in Chengdu. That those kinds of policies hurt America and they hurt China. And the benefit of them was extremely limited. So I'm expecting progress on a lot of issues, but a lot of it, again, I keep coming back to the same point, is what is the Chinese government going to do? The question is, how do you create this virtuous cycle instead of this vicious cycle? So it's the creation of a virtuous cycle where China does a good thing, America does a good thing, China does another good thing, and you start kind of peeling away the differences.
Dialogues mechanisms between the two countries at the government level, at the so-called second track, at the academic level has been hugely harmed over the past 4 years. Some have collapsed, others have been put onto the side. So how efficient do you think the Biden administration will be having the political tools and the momentum to restart, reestablish, and refresh all of these possibilities?
By the way, during this 4-year nightmare, our track 2 dialogues, our unofficial dialogues have not only continued, they've increased. So we now have 7, the National Committee on U.S. China Relations has 7 track 2 dialogues with Chinese counterparts on issues ranging from digital economy to strategic issues, to energy, to healthcare, to human rights, rule of law. So that has continued, and I expect it will continue during the Biden administration. I don't think the Biden administration will go back to having the number of dialogues that had existed in 2016 before Trump came into office. I think they will establish dialogues with the Chinese in a limited number of areas. Again, there was frustration on the part of the U.S. government that these dialogues often were just talk and never yielded concrete results. So media will be unhappy maybe because you won't get up in the morning and see that the president has made a tweet which has upset China.
Tariff is a very obvious target. Now, it didn't benefit the United States in terms of trade with China or overall trade globally, but it does harm China and U.S. interests as well. So, Mr. Orlins, how fast do you expect the Biden administration be able to correct that course?
Well, when you say correct the course, there are certain aspects of the Trump policy which the Biden administration will continue to follow, and there's certain which will be thrown out. I mean, ultimately, tariffs are bad for China, bad for America, bad for the American people, bad for the Chinese people. It's effectively a tax on the American consumer. So I would expect that early in the Biden administration, we will see discussions with the Chinese on how to reduce those tariffs. That it won't be done unilaterally by the United States, it won't be done unilaterally by China, but together we can begin to lower these tariffs, which benefits the Chinese people, benefits the American people. It especially benefits the working families of the United States. I've been fortunate in life. If my bills go up $800 a year, it doesn't have a material impact on my life. If you're a working family and your income is $25,000 a year and your bills go up $800 a year, that's a material effect on your life. And you need to decide, do you not buy the shoes? Do you not buy the pants? Do you not buy the school books for the kids? It's not a good thing. So I think the Biden administration recognizes that, and I expect that they will enter into discussions with the Chinese government on how to reduce these tariffs because they're bad. But China needs to move ahead it's doing a good job now in financial services. We're beginning to see real openings in financial services, and that should move ahead faster.
How much will the Biden administration be able to tend the garden of diplomacy, given two things? One, the U.S. baggage of the past few years, and also the recent mob and insurrection happening in the Capitol. The rest of the world also have a taste of what America is like today. Secondly, it also has a lot to do with how much attention span and energy the new administration has toward, building international relations, including that with China, which is one of the most strategic bilateral relations, as there are so many things to do within the country, including COVID-19.
They are, of course, going to be focused first on COVID-19. 4,000 plus deaths today, hundreds of thousands of more illnesses. Second, they're going to have to focus on the economy. But both of those issues, Tian Wei, give China the opportunity to help and set a positive tone. They're experts in China who can help the Biden administration dealing with COVID-19. And they should do that. They should reach out to the extent that it is helpful. But just think, if China cut tariffs immediately on some American goods without waiting for the United States to do it, that would help Americans in a way that would set a positive tone for U.S. China relations.
But you are not answering my question. My question really is how much energy the new administration really could have for international issues. I mean, just realistically speaking, and also how much they will be able to change the nature of U.S. China relations at the very beginning of their term, for example, for the next 6 months, given the fact that their predecessor, before they leave their office, they set a lot of traps regarding what the new administration could do about China.
I have enormous confidence in the people that President Biden has appointed to run our China policy. They will be perfectly capable of making whatever changes they deem necessary while others in the administration work on COVID-19, work on the economy. This is a team. He has put together a team. We joke it's a reunion. What they want to accomplish. Can they deal with these issues and have initiatives on international relations? Absolutely, they can. The question is, which of those Trump policies do they want to reverse? And in my view, as you correctly point out, since November 3rd, since Trump lost the election by over 7 million votes, his administration, the White House put out a number of executive orders, the State Department and Treasury put out other administrative orders. In my view, 100% of them should be reversed. They should all be reversed, and then the Biden administration should consider one by one which, if any of these, make sense.
If you were asked, Mr. Orlins, about a list, priorities to deal with by members of the Biden administration, many of whom, in fact, over the decades, you have been working quite closely with, what kind of list would you provide?
Changing the visa policies is absolutely, that has to be a priority.
Yeah.
I will suggest, and I have suggested, that Chinese who've been denied visas or other, these restrictions on visas are damaging for no good. There is no benefit that accrues to China or the United States. So I think the tariff reduction discussions need to occur immediately. I think it's important for American exports to China, and I think it's important for the American consumer to begin to benefit from those lower prices. So that is in effect a tax cut. I think we need to immediately enter into discussions on the terms under which we each can open the respective consulates that have been closed. I think we need, as you've made reference to already, we need more cooperation on public health issues. We need to work together, not only to deal with this pandemic, but to deal with future pandemics. And I think the Biden administration will make that a priority. I think very easy to do is invite back CGTN and other Chinese media outlets back to the United States. We've restricted some of the visas for them. I think China should not only invite back expelled American journalists, but add to the number of American journalists who are in China. I think we need to enter into discussions to solve the Huawei issue. I think that is a extremely complicated, difficult discussion, but it really should be able to be resolved. I can't say we, but I certainly want each government to take actions which creates a positive atmosphere, which can then lead to policies which benefit the people of America and the people of China.
I really wondered, Mr. Orlins, how much the U.S. needs to repair itself in order to get all these important tasks that you mentioned done.
Maybe I'm overly optimistic because of the joy I experienced yesterday at 12 at noon, but it really is morning in America. We have put experts back in charge. We have put science back in charge. We're not going to debate the science of climate change anymore. We're going to debate what we need to do. So I am incredibly optimistic today. When I look at the things that President Biden is doing, when I look at the rollout of his pandemic policies, it just makes my heart soar. I would close with my favorite movie, which was called Little Big Man, a Dustin Hoffman movie of almost 45 years ago. And the Indian chief used to greet Dustin Hoffman and said, "When I see you, my heart soars like a hawk." What I saw yesterday, my heart soared like a hawk.
Steve Orlins, President of the National Committee on U.S. China Relations, an optimistic patriot, as we have just discovered. Thank you so much, Steve. All the best and be safe. That's my conversation with Stephen Orlins, president of the National Committee on U.S. China Relations. As he indicated in the conversation, tariff issue is going to be a big one between China and the United States. Will the new administration having both the courage and the political skills to handle it well?